Good morning, beautiful soul. As the first rays of sunlight pierce through your window and your eyes slowly adjust to this brand new day, I want you to pause right here with me. Yes, right here in this moment. Before you reach for your phone, before you check those notifications, before the noise of the world floods your mind, let's talk about something that could walk through their days with an unexplainable peace, completely transform, not just your morning, but your entire life. Have you ever wondered why some people seem to an unshakable confidence, a joy that doesn't depend on circumstances? Have you ever noticed how certain individuals seem to navigate life's storms with a calmness that defies logic? What if I told you that the secret isn't in their circumstances, their bank account, or their natural disposition? What if the secret lies in how they start each day? Today, we're diving deep into something that has the power to revolutionize your mornings and transform your entire existence. We're talking about the profound practice of beginning each day in the presence of God through prayer. This isn't just another morning routine or productivity hack. This is about discovering the incredible power that flows when you choose to connect with the Creator of the universe before anything else gets your attention. Now, before we go any further, let me share something with you. I've spent years studying the morning habits of people who live extraordinary lives, people who seem to have tapped into something deeper than mere human willpower. And here's what I discovered. Without exception, every single one of them understands the critical importance of starting their day with intentional spiritual connection. They've learned that prayer isn't just something you squeeze in when you have time. It's the foundation upon which everything else is built. But here's where it gets really interesting. Most people approach prayer backwards. They wait until they're in crisis, until they're desperate, until they've exhausted every other option. They treat prayer like a last resort instead of their first response. And that's exactly why so many people struggle to experience the peace and presence of God in their daily lives. What I'm about to share with you will challenge everything you think you know about prayer and morning routines. We're going to uncover why praying first isn't just a nice spiritual discipline, but an absolute game changer for how you experience every moment of your day. We're going to explore how this simple shift can fill your morning with divine presence, supernatural peace, and unstoppable confidence. Let me paint a picture for you. Imagine waking up tomorrow morning not with anxiety about your to-do list, not with worry about the challenges ahead, but with a deep, settled assurance that you are loved, protected, and guided by the most powerful force in the universe. Imagine starting your day not by scrolling through social media and filling your mind with other people's opinions, but by connecting with the source of all wisdom and strength. Imagine beginning each morning knowing that whatever comes your way, you're not facing it alone. This isn't wishful thinking. This isn't religious fantasy. This is the reality that becomes available to you when you understand the transformative power of morning prayer. And by the end of this video, you're going to have a clear roadmap for how to make this your new reality. Now, I know what some of you might be thinking. You might be saying, "But I'm not a morning person," or "I don't have time for long prayers," or "I wouldn't even know what to say." Trust me, I've heard every excuse, and I've probably made most of them myself. But what if I told you that effective morning prayer doesn't require you to be a spiritual giant or have hours of free time? What if I told you that God is more interested in your heart than your eloquence, more moved by your sincerity than your sophisticated theology? Here's the truth that might surprise you. God has been waiting for this conversation with you. Every morning, before you even open your eyes, He's already there, ready to meet with you, ready to pour His love and guidance into your day. The question isn't whether He wants to connect with you. The question is whether you'll create space for that connection to happen. Throughout this video, we're going to walk through exactly how to establish this life-changing practice. We'll explore the biblical foundation for morning prayer, the practical steps you can take starting tomorrow, and the incredible benefits you can expect when you make this commitment. But more than that, we're going to discover together how prayer becomes the secret weapon that transforms ordinary mornings into divine encounters. You see, when you pray first, something supernatural happens. Your perspective shifts, your priorities realign. Your peace increases, your faith strengthens, and suddenly the day that seemed overwhelming becomes manageable because you're no longer carrying it alone. You've invited the God of the universe to walk through it with you. Think about the people in your life who seem to have it all together. I'm not talking about the ones who project a perfect image on social media. I'm talking about the ones who possess genuine peace, authentic joy, and unshakable confidence, regardless of their circumstances. If you look closely, you'll discover that most of them have learned this secret. They start their day by connecting with God through prayer. This practice isn't about earning God's favor or checking off a religious duty. It's about positioning your heart and mind to receive the love, guidance, and strength that He wants to pour into your life. It's about creating space for the divine to intersect with the ordinary. It's about ensuring that before the world gets your attention, God gets your heart. And here's what I love about this. It doesn't matter where you are in your spiritual journey. Whether you've been following God for decades or you're just beginning to explore faith, whether you feel close to Him or distant, whether your life is going smoothly or falling apart, He meets you exactly where you are. Every morning is a fresh start, a new opportunity to experience His presence and receive His grace. Now let's get practical for a moment. When I talk about praying first, I'm not necessarily talking about elaborate hour-long prayer sessions, though there's certainly nothing wrong with those if you have the time and inclination. I'm talking about the intentional decision to make your first conversation of the day a conversation with God. It might be 5 minutes, it might be 30, it might be spoken words, it might be silent meditation. The key isn't the length or the format. The key is the priority. What happens when you make this shift is remarkable. Instead of starting your day reactive, you start it proactive. Instead of beginning with anxiety, you begin with peace. Instead of rushing into the chaos, you enter from a place of centeredness. You're not just hoping for a good day, you're partnering with God to create one. Throughout history, the most influential men and women of faith have understood this principle. They knew that the tone for their entire day was set in those first precious moments of morning. They recognized that their strength, wisdom, and peace didn't come from their own resources, but from their connection to the infinite source of all good things. But this isn't just about historical figures or spiritual giants. This is about you, right here, right now. This is about the ordinary person who wants to experience extraordinary peace and purpose. This is about discovering that you don't have to face your days alone, that you don't have to rely solely on your own strength and wisdom. As we continue through this exploration together, we're going to unpack the specific ways that morning prayer transforms your day. We'll look at how it changes your perspective on challenges, how it increases your capacity for joy, how it strengthens your relationships, and how it aligns your actions with your deepest values and beliefs. We're also going to address the practical obstacles that often keep people from establishing this practice. Things like busy schedules, distractions, not knowing what to pray about, or feeling like their prayers aren't being heard. Because here's the thing, every obstacle has a solution, and every excuse can be overcome when you understand the incredible value of what you're pursuing. The journey we're embarking on together isn't just about improving your morning routine. It's about revolutionizing your relationship with God and transforming how you experience life itself. It's about discovering that every day can be an adventure when you're walking in partnership with the Creator of the universe. So wherever you are right now, whatever brought you to this moment, whatever questions or doubts or hopes you're carrying, Know that you're exactly where you need to be. God has orchestrated this moment, this message, this opportunity for you to discover something that could change everything. Are you ready to discover what happens when you choose to pray first? Are you ready to experience the peace that comes from starting each day in God's presence? Are you ready to transform your mornings and in the process transform your entire life? Then let's dive deeper into this incredible journey together, because what we're about to explore has the power to revolutionize not just how you start your day, but how you live your entire life. The truth is, most people have this completely backwards. They wake up and immediately surrender their minds to whatever demands attention the loudest. The buzzing phone, the urgent email, the news headlines designed to trigger anxiety. They hand over their first thoughts, their freshest mental energy, their most receptive moments to forces that drain rather than fill them. And then they wonder why they feel empty, why they're constantly playing catch-up, why peace feels so elusive. But what if there was a different way? What if the very first moments of your day could become a wellspring of strength instead of a source of stress? What if your morning could transform from a frantic race against time into a sacred encounter with the divine? Here's what I've discovered after years of studying this practice and witnessing its effects in countless lives. When you choose to pray first, you're not just changing your schedule. You're changing your entire spiritual posture for the day. You're moving from a defensive position to an offensive one. You're shifting from reactive to proactive, from anxious to anchored, from scattered to centered. Let me tell you about Sarah, a single mother I know who was drowning in the chaos of raising 3 kids while working full-time. Every morning was a battlefield, getting everyone ready, finding lost homework, making lunches, dealing with meltdowns, all while trying to get herself together for work. She was exhausted before her day even began. Sound familiar? Then Sarah made one simple change. She started setting her alarm 15 minutes earlier, not to get more done, but to get alone with God. Those 15 minutes became her sanctuary. Before the demands hit, before the chaos erupted, she found peace in prayer. And something remarkable happened. The same circumstances, the same challenges, but now she was facing them from a completely different place inside herself. Within weeks, her family noticed the change. Her patience increased, her stress decreased. She wasn't a different person, but she was the same person operating from a different source of strength. The external pressures hadn't disappeared, but her internal foundation had become unshakable. This is what happens when you understand the secret that changes everything. It's not about having perfect circumstances. It's about having perfect connection. It's not about controlling what happens to you. It's about controlling what happens in you. Now let me address something that might be running through your mind right now. Maybe you're thinking, this sounds great in theory, but I've tried praying before and nothing happened. I didn't feel anything. It seemed like my words were just bouncing off the ceiling. If that's you, I want you to know you're not alone, and more importantly, you're not doing anything wrong. The problem isn't that God isn't listening. The problem is that most of us were never taught how to create the conditions where we can actually hear Him respond. We live in such a noisy, distracted world that we've forgotten how to be still, how to listen, how to recognize the gentle whisper of divine guidance. Morning prayer isn't about performing for God or trying to impress Him with our spiritual vocabulary. It's about creating a quiet space where heaven can touch earth, where the eternal can intersect with the everyday, where your human heart can connect with the heart of your Creator. Think about it this way. If someone important was coming to visit you, someone you deeply respected and loved, you wouldn't just throw open the door while you were in the middle of cooking breakfast, talking on the phone and watching the news. You'd prepare. You'd create space. You'd give them your full attention. That's what morning prayer does. It creates space for the most important relationship in your life. It says to God, before anyone else gets my attention, before anything else captures my focus, I want to be fully present with you. And here's what's beautiful about this practice. God doesn't require you to have it all figured out. He doesn't need you to come with perfect faith or eloquent words. He simply wants you to come, authentically, honestly, openly. Some mornings, your prayer might be a cry for help. Other mornings, it might be overflowing with gratitude. Sometimes you'll have specific requests. Other times, you'll simply sit in His presence, not saying anything at all. Every type of prayer is welcome because every type represents your heart turning toward Him. But let's get specific about what this actually looks like, because I don't want to leave you with beautiful concepts that you can't practically apply. When I talk about praying first, here's what I mean. Before you check your phone, spend time with God. Before you scroll through social media, scroll through His promises. Before you fill your mind with the world's agenda, align your heart with His purposes. Before you react to circumstances, connect with the one who is sovereign over all circumstances. This might mean getting up 15 minutes earlier. It might mean keeping your phone in another room, so you're not tempted to grab it immediately upon waking. It might mean preparing the night before by placing your Bible and journal next to your bed. These aren't legalistic rules. They're practical tools that help you protect what matters most. Now, what do you actually pray about? This is where many people get stuck. They think prayer has to be complicated or formal, but it's really just conversation with someone who loves you more than you can imagine. Start with gratitude. Before you ask for anything, before you present any requests, acknowledge the good that's already present in your life. Thank God for the breath in your lungs, for the bed you slept in, for the opportunity of a new day. Gratitude shifts your entire perspective and opens your heart to receive more. Then move into surrender. This is where you acknowledge that you're not in control, and you don't want to be. You hand over your plans, your worries, your expectations to the one who sees the bigger picture. You say, God, I don't know what this day will bring, but I trust you with it. Use me, guide me, lead me. After surrender comes supplication, which is simply asking for what you need. Be specific. God cares about the details of your life. Ask for wisdom for that difficult conversation you need to have. Ask for peace about that situation that's been keeping you awake. Ask for strength for the challenges you're facing. Ask for guidance for the decisions you need to make. Finally, spend time in silence. This might be the most important part and the most difficult for our noise-addicted culture. Just be quiet. Listen. Don't feel pressure to hear an audible voice or have some mystical experience. Simply rest in His presence and allow Him to minister to your heart in ways that go beyond words. What happens during this time of connection is profound. Your perspective realigns, your priorities clarify, your peace deepens. You remember who you are and whose you are. You gain strength for what lies ahead and wisdom for how to navigate it. The most successful people I know aren't necessarily the ones with the best strategies or the most resources. They're the ones who have learned to draw from a source that never runs dry. They understand that their strength, their wisdom, their peace, and their purpose all flow from their connection to God. This practice becomes even more powerful when you understand that you're not just praying for yourself. When you start your day in prayer, you're positioning yourself to be a blessing to everyone you encounter. You become a conduit of God's love, peace, and grace in a world that desperately needs all three. Your family benefits when you start the day connected to God instead of stressed and scattered. Your co-workers benefit when you bring peace and wisdom instead of anxiety and reactivity. Your community benefits when you operate from love instead of fear. Morning prayer isn't selfish. It's one of the most generous things you can do. Because when you're filled up, you have something to pour out. When you're connected to the source of all good things, you become a source of good things for others. But here's where most people miss the mark entirely. They think prayer is about getting God to change their circumstances, when the real transformation happens when God changes them. They approach prayer like a cosmic vending machine, inserting their requests and expecting immediate delivery. But prayer isn't about manipulating God to fit into your agenda. It's about aligning yourself with His. When you understand this shift, everything changes. You stop praying, "God, make my boss easier to work with," and start praying, "God, give me the patience and wisdom to navigate this relationship well." You stop asking, "God, make this problem disappear," and start asking, "God, show me what you want to teach me through this challenge." This isn't passive resignation. This is active partnership with the Creator of the universe. This is recognizing that He sees things you can't see, knows things you don't know, and has plans that far exceed your limited perspective. Let me share something that will completely revolutionize how you think about morning prayer. Most people treat it like an optional add-on to their day, something nice to do if they have extra time. But what if I told you that morning prayer isn't just a spiritual discipline? What if it's actually the most practical thing you can do to ensure your day goes well? Think about it. When you start your day connected to infinite wisdom, you make better decisions. When you begin from a place of peace, you handle stress more effectively. When you're anchored in love, you respond to difficult people with grace instead of reactivity. When you're aligned with purpose, you focus on what truly matters instead of getting distracted by every urgent but unimportant demand. This isn't mystical thinking. This is practical psychology backed by spiritual truth. Your internal state determines your external experience. And there's no more powerful way to establish a positive internal state than by connecting with God first thing in the morning. Dr. Andrew Huberman, a neuroscientist at Stanford, has extensively researched morning routines and their impact on mental performance. While he approaches it from a scientific perspective, his findings actually support what believers have known for centuries: how you start your morning literally rewires your brain for the rest of the day. When you begin in peace and focus, you strengthen neural pathways that support calm, clear thinking throughout your waking hours. But here's what science can't measure and psychology can't explain: the supernatural dimension of morning prayer. When you invite God into your day, you're not just accessing human wisdom and strength. You're tapping into divine resources that transcend natural limitations. I've seen people pray for patience and then find themselves unusually calm in situations that would normally trigger them. I've watched individuals pray for wisdom and then receive insights that they never could have generated on their own. I've witnessed people pray for strength and then accomplish things they thought were impossible. This isn't coincidence. This is what happens when finite human beings connect with an infinite God who delights in empowering His children to live extraordinary lives. Now let me address something that might be creating resistance in your mind right now. Maybe you're thinking, "I'm just not a religious person," or "I don't know if I really believe all this God stuff." Here's what I want you to know. God isn't interested in your religious performance. He's interested in authentic relationship. You don't have to have perfect theology to start praying. You don't need to understand all the mysteries of faith to begin this practice. You just need to be willing to try, willing to open your heart to the possibility that there's more to life than what you can see and control. Some of the most powerful prayers I've ever heard came from people who were just beginning to explore faith. There's something beautiful about the honesty of someone who says, "God, I don't even know if you're really there, but I'm hoping you are because I need help." That kind of raw authenticity moves the heart of God more than the most eloquent religious language. He's not looking for perfection, He's looking for connection. And if you're someone who does have faith but has gotten out of the habit of morning prayer, I want to speak directly to you. You know this truth in your heart. You've experienced the difference it makes when you start your day with God versus when you don't. So why have you stopped? Maybe life got busy. Maybe you convinced yourself you didn't have time. Maybe you went through a difficult season and felt like God wasn't listening, so you stopped talking. I understand. I've been there. But here's what I've learned. The times when prayer feels most difficult are often the times when you need it most. The seasons when God feels distant are precisely when you need to draw near. The moments when you feel too busy to pray are exactly when prayer would create the peace and clarity to handle your busyness better. God hasn't moved. He hasn't changed. He's still there, still loving you, still waiting for you to return to that place of connection. Every morning is a fresh opportunity to start again. Let me paint a picture of what your life could look like when morning prayer becomes your non-negotiable foundation. Imagine waking up not with anxiety about the day ahead, but with anticipation about what God might do. Picture yourself facing challenges not with worry, but with confidence that you're not alone. Envision having such a deep sense of peace and purpose that external circumstances can't derail you. Think about possessing the kind of wisdom that helps you see solutions where others see only problems. Consider what it would be like to have such a strong connection to divine love that you naturally overflow with kindness and patience toward others. This isn't fantasy. This is the normal Christian life when it's powered by consistent connection with God. This is what becomes possible when you stop trying to live on your own strength and start drawing from the infinite resources of heaven. But let's get even more specific about the practical benefits you can expect. When you establish morning prayer as your daily foundation, your decision-making improves dramatically. Instead of relying on limited human wisdom, you have access to divine guidance. Instead of making choices based on fear or emotion, you're operating from a place of peace and clarity. Your relationships transform. When you start each day filled with God's love, you have love to give others. When you begin from a place of forgiveness and grace, you naturally extend those qualities to the people around you. When you're secure in your identity as God's beloved child, you don't need to seek validation or approval from others. Your productivity increases, but not in the way you might expect. It's not that you necessarily get more done, though that often happens. It's that you focus on the right things. You distinguish between what's urgent and what's important. You spend your energy on activities that align with your values and purpose instead of just reacting to whatever demands your attention. Your stress levels decrease significantly. This doesn't mean problems disappear, but your capacity to handle them expands. When you know that God is sovereign over your circumstances, you can face uncertainty with peace. When you're confident in His love for you, you don't need to control outcomes. Your joy becomes less dependent on circumstances and more rooted in your relationship with God. This is crucial because circumstances are constantly changing, but God's love for you remains constant. When your happiness is anchored in something unchanging, you experience a stability that transcends situational ups and downs. Most importantly, your sense of purpose clarifies. When you're regularly connecting with God, you begin to understand not just what you're supposed to do, but why you're here. You discover that your life has meaning beyond just personal success or happiness. You realize you're part of something bigger, something eternal, something that matters. This transformation doesn't happen overnight. Like any relationship, your connection with God deepens over time. But you can start experiencing benefits immediately. Even your very first morning of intentional prayer can shift your perspective and set a different tone for your day. The key is consistency, not perfection. You don't need to pray for hours or use complicated language. You just need to show up regularly, authentically, expectantly. God honors the sincere heart more than the sophisticated prayer. And here's something beautiful. As morning prayer becomes a habit, you'll find that your desire for it increases. What might initially feel like discipline gradually becomes delight. You'll discover that those quiet moments with God become the highlight of your day, the time you most look forward to. This happens because relationship with God is unlike any other relationship you'll ever experience. Human relationships, no matter how wonderful, have limitations. People get tired, distracted, busy, or overwhelmed. But God is always available, always interested, always ready to listen and respond. He never has a bad day that affects how he treats you. He's never too busy for your concerns. He never gets bored with your problems or tired of your questions. His love for you is consistent, unconditional, and inexhaustible. When you tap into this kind of relationship first thing in the morning, it sets a foundation that nothing can shake. You start each day knowing you're loved, knowing you're not alone, knowing you have access to wisdom and strength beyond your own resources. This is what I want for you. This is why I'm so passionate about helping you understand the power of morning prayer. Not because it's a religious obligation, but because it's a life-changing opportunity. Not because you have to, but because you get to. Every morning, the God of the universe is waiting to meet with you, to fill you with his presence, to equip you for whatever lies ahead. The question isn't whether he's available. The question is whether you'll accept his invitation. Tomorrow morning, you have a choice. You can wake up and immediately surrender your attention to your phone, to the news, to your worries, to your to-do list. Or you can choose to connect first with the source of all peace, wisdom, and strength. You can start your day reactive, scattered, and anxious. Or you can begin anchored, centered, and confident. You can face your challenges alone, or you can face them in partnership with the one who has already overcome the world. The choice is yours, but I promise you this. If you choose to pray first, if you make connecting with God your morning priority, your life will never be the same. The power of this choice extends far beyond what you might imagine. You see, when you commit to praying first, you're not just adjusting your morning schedule, you're declaring war on mediocrity. You're refusing to accept a life of spiritual poverty when abundance is available. You're choosing to live from the inside out rather than the outside in. Let me tell you what happens in the unseen realm when you make this commitment. Every morning becomes a spiritual battleground, and your decision to pray first determines whether you enter that battle armed or defenseless. The enemy of your soul knows the power of morning prayer, which is exactly why he works so hard to keep you from it. He'll whisper that you don't have time, that it won't make a difference, that you can pray later. He'll create urgencies that seem to demand your immediate attention. He'll flood your mind with worries and distractions the moment you try to focus on God. Why? Because he knows that if you consistently start your days connected to heaven, his ability to derail your life diminishes dramatically. But here's what the enemy doesn't want you to understand. Every time you choose prayer over pressure, every time you prioritize God's voice over the world's noise, every time you seek his face before you face your day, you're building spiritual momentum that becomes unstoppable. I want to share something with you that most people never consider. When you pray in the morning, you're not just talking to God. You're literally changing the spiritual atmosphere around your life. You're inviting his presence to go before you, to prepare your path, to influence your circumstances in ways you'll never fully understand this side of heaven. Think about Daniel in the Bible. Even when it became illegal to pray, even when it meant facing a den of lions, he continued his practice of praying 3 times daily with his windows open toward Jerusalem. Why? Because he understood something that transformed his entire existence. Prayer wasn't just communication with God. It was his lifeline to divine power, wisdom, and protection. Daniel lived in one of the most challenging environments imaginable. He was a captive in a foreign land, surrounded by hostile forces, serving under ungodly rulers. Yet he consistently demonstrated supernatural wisdom, favor, and influence. How he never missed his appointments with God. The same power that sustained Daniel is available to you every single morning. The same wisdom that guided him through impossible situations is waiting to guide you through your challenges. The same divine favor that protected him can surround your life when you make prayer your non-negotiable priority. But let's address something that trips up many people who try to establish this practice. They start with unrealistic expectations about what morning prayer should look like or how they should feel during it. They think they need to have profound spiritual experiences or receive dramatic revelations every time they pray. Here's the truth that will set you free. The power of morning prayer isn't found in the intensity of your feelings or the eloquence of your words. It's found in the consistency of your connection. Some mornings you'll feel God's presence powerfully. Other mornings, you might feel nothing at all. Both experiences are normal and valuable. Faith isn't about feeling, it's about believing. And prayer isn't about emotional highs, it's about relational intimacy. When you show up consistently, even when you don't feel like it, especially when you don't feel like it, you're demonstrating the kind of faith that moves God's heart. I remember talking to a businessman who had built a multi-million-dollar company from nothing. When I asked him about his secret to success, he didn't mention his business strategy or marketing techniques. He said, "Every morning for the past 20 years, I spend 30 minutes with God before I do anything else. I don't always feel inspired. I don't always have profound insights, but I always show up." And somehow, that consistency has shaped everything else in my life. That's the kind of faith that transforms ordinary people into extraordinary influences, not because they're naturally gifted or specially chosen, but because they understand the power of consistent connection with their Creator. Now let me give you some practical wisdom about building this habit, because knowing the importance of morning prayer and actually doing it consistently are two different things. The gap between knowledge and application is where most people get stuck. First, start smaller than you think you should. If you're not currently praying in the mornings at all, don't commit to an hour-long prayer session. Start with 5 minutes. The goal isn't to impress God with your dedication. It's to build a sustainable rhythm that you can maintain long-term. Success breeds success. When you consistently show up for 5 minutes, you'll naturally want to extend that time. But if you start too ambitiously and then fail to maintain it, you'll likely abandon the practice altogether out of discouragement. Second, prepare the night before. This is crucial. Don't leave your morning prayer to chance or spontaneous motivation. Set out your Bible, your journal, whatever materials help you focus. Choose a specific location where you'll pray. Decide on a general structure for your prayer time. When morning comes, you want to eliminate as many decisions and obstacles as possible. Third, protect your prayer time like you would protect a meeting with the most important person in your life. Because that's exactly what it is. You wouldn't let random interruptions disrupt a business meeting with a potential million-dollar client. Don't let random interruptions disrupt your meeting with the King of the universe. This means turning off your phone or putting it in airplane mode. It means letting family members know this time is sacred. It means choosing a location where you're least likely to be disturbed. You're creating a sanctuary in space and time where heaven can touch earth. Fourth, have realistic expectations about the process. Some days your mind will wander. Some mornings you'll feel distracted or tired. Sometimes you might feel like you're just going through the motions. This doesn't mean you're doing something wrong or that God isn't pleased with your efforts. Even Jesus had moments when prayer felt difficult. In the Garden of Gethsemane, he had to pray the same prayer 3 times, and he asked his disciples to stay awake and pray with him because he was struggling. If the Son of God experienced challenges in prayer, you certainly will too. The key is persistence, not perfection. Every time you show up, even when you don't feel like it, you're building spiritual muscle that will serve you for the rest of your life. Fifth, remember that this is about relationship, not ritual. God isn't interested in checking boxes or following formulas. He wants authentic connection with the real you. Don't feel pressure to pray in a certain way or use specific language. Talk to him like you would talk to your closest friend, because that's what he wants to be. Share your fears, your dreams, your frustrations, your gratitude. Ask him questions. Tell him about your day ahead. Request his guidance for specific decisions. Thank him for his blessings. Confess areas where you've fallen short. The content matters less than the heart behind it. Now, let me address something that might be creating doubt in your mind. Maybe you've tried to pray before and felt like nothing happened. Maybe you've wondered if God really hears you or cares about your daily concerns. Maybe you've questioned whether prayer actually makes any difference. These doubts are normal, and they don't disqualify you from experiencing the power of morning prayer. In fact, bringing your doubts to God in prayer is one of the most honest things you can do. He's not intimidated by your questions or threatened by your uncertainties. The Bible is full of people who struggled with doubt, yet experienced incredible breakthrough through prayer. Thomas doubted Jesus' resurrection, but became one of the most committed disciples. Peter denied knowing Jesus, but became the leader of the early church. David questioned God's faithfulness, but wrote psalms that have encouraged believers for thousands of years. Your doubts don't have to be resolved before you start praying. They can be resolved through praying. As you consistently connect with God, as you experience His faithfulness in small ways, as you begin to see answers to your prayers, your faith will naturally strengthen. But here's something crucial to understand. God's answers don't always look like what you expect. Sometimes He says yes to your requests. Sometimes He says no because He has something better planned. Sometimes He says wait because the timing isn't right. And sometimes He answers in ways you never could have imagined. The goal of prayer isn't to get God to rubber stamp your agenda. It's to align your heart with His purposes. It's to develop such trust in His character that you can say, like Jesus did, "Not my will, but yours be done," and mean it with genuine peace. This level of surrender doesn't happen overnight. It develops through relationship, through experiencing God's faithfulness over time, through learning to trust His heart even when you can't understand His ways. Let me tell you about Maria, a nurse who worked the night shift at a busy hospital. Her schedule made traditional morning prayer challenging, since she often didn't get home until 8 a.m. and needed to sleep during what most people consider morning hours. But Maria understood that the principle wasn't about a specific time on the clock. It was about prioritizing connection with God before anything else claimed her attention. So when she got home from work, before she did anything else, she would spend 15 minutes in prayer. For her, this was her morning prayer time. Within months, Maria noticed dramatic changes. Her sleep improved despite the stress of her job. Her relationships with difficult patients became more peaceful. Her energy levels increased, even though her work schedule remained demanding. She began to see her job not just as a career, but as a ministry, a way to be God's hands and heart to people in their most vulnerable moments. The specific timing mattered less than the priority. Maria had discovered what every person who practices morning prayer eventually learns. When you put God first, everything else falls into its proper place. This brings us to a critical point that could revolutionize how you think about your entire day. Morning prayer isn't just about the time you spend talking to God. It's about inviting Him into every moment that follows. It's about establishing a connection that continues throughout your waking hours. When you start your day in prayer, you're essentially saying, "God, I want to walk through this day with you. I want your perspective on my conversations, your wisdom for my decisions, your love flowing through my interactions, your peace guarding my heart, regardless of what circumstances I encounter." This transforms your entire day into a prayer, into an ongoing conversation with your Creator. You begin to see His hand in the smallest details, to recognize His voice in unexpected moments, to experience His presence in the most ordinary activities. A business executive I know describes it this way: "My morning prayer time is like plugging my phone into the charger overnight. I start the day at full power. But throughout the day, I send up quick prayers, little conversations with God, like getting power boosts that keep me connected." By evening, instead of feeling drained, I feel like I've been sustained by something beyond my own resources. This is the beauty of what happens when morning prayer becomes your foundation. You don't just have a single spiritual experience at the beginning of your day. You cultivate an awareness of God's presence that carries you through every moment. Your commute becomes a time of worship. Your work becomes an opportunity to serve God by serving others excellently. Your challenges become chances to see God's power demonstrated. Your relationships become expressions of His love flowing through you. This isn't about being religious or super spiritual. It's about being fully alive to the reality that you're never alone, that every moment matters, that your life has eternal significance because you're in partnership with the eternal God. But perhaps you're wondering how to transition from where you are now to where this kind of life becomes your reality. Maybe you're thinking, this all sounds amazing, but I don't even know where to begin. Here's your starting point. Tomorrow morning, set your alarm 15 minutes earlier than usual. When it goes off, instead of reaching for your phone, reach for your heart. Take a few deep breaths and simply say, "Good morning, God. I'm here. I'm listening. I need you today." That's it. No complicated formulas, no religious jargon, no performance pressure. Just authentic connection between your heart and His. From there, you might thank Him for 3 specific things you're grateful for. You might share with Him one concern you're carrying. You might ask Him to guide you through one specific challenge you're facing. You might simply sit in silence and let Him minister to your spirit in ways that go beyond words. The beautiful thing about God is that He meets you exactly where you are. If you come to Him with a broken heart, He becomes your healer. If you approach Him with confusion, He becomes your wisdom. If you bring Him your fears, He becomes your peace. If you offer Him your dreams, He becomes your guide. He doesn't require you to have it all figured out before you come. He doesn't demand perfection or spiritual maturity as a prerequisite for relationship. He simply asks you to come as you are, with whatever faith you have, however small it might seem. And here's what I love about starting this practice. You don't have to wait to see if it works. You can begin experiencing benefits immediately. The very first morning you choose to pray first, you'll notice a difference in your perspective, your peace, your approach to the day. That difference will be subtle at first, like the first rays of dawn that gradually illuminate the landscape. But as you continue this practice consistently, the transformation becomes undeniable. What starts as a small shift in your morning routine evolves into a complete renovation of how you experience life. Your problems don't disappear, but your capacity to handle them expands. Your circumstances might not change, but your response to them transforms. Your limitations remain, but you discover access to unlimited divine resources. This is what awaits you on the other side of the decision to make morning prayer your daily foundation. Not a life free from challenges, but a life equipped to face any challenge with supernatural peace and wisdom. Not an existence where everything goes according to your plans, but a journey where you discover that God's plans are infinitely better than anything you could have imagined for yourself. Not a guarantee that every day will be easy, but an assurance that no day will be faced alone. The invitation is before you. The opportunity is available. The God who created the universe and knows your name is waiting to meet with you tomorrow morning. Will you accept His invitation? Will you discover what happens when you choose to pray first? Your answer to these questions could change everything. The transformation that awaits you is more profound than you might dare to imagine. But before we go deeper into what this looks like practically, I need to address something that stops most people before they even begin. It's the voice in your head right now saying, "But what if I'm not good enough? What if God doesn't want to hear from me? What if I've made too many mistakes, gone too far, disappointed Him too many times?" Listen to me carefully. That voice is not from God. That voice is the enemy of your soul, trying to rob you of the most powerful practice available to human beings, because he knows something you're about to discover. When you consistently connect with God first thing in the morning, you become dangerous to the kingdom of darkness and incredibly valuable to the kingdom of light. Let me share with you what actually happens in the spiritual realm when someone commits to morning prayer. Every time you choose to seek God's face before you face your day, you're sending shockwaves through hell and causing celebration in heaven. You're positioning yourself to receive divine downloads of wisdom, supernatural peace, and heavenly perspective that will influence every decision you make for the next 16 hours. But here's where most people get tripped up. They think prayer is about talking to God, when the real power comes from learning to listen. They approach prayer like a monologue when it's designed to be a dialogue. They come with their agenda instead of surrendering to His. The most life-changing prayers I've ever experienced weren't the ones where I did all the talking. They were the ones where I learned to be quiet, to wait, to listen for that still, small voice that cuts through all the noise of daily life and speaks directly to my spirit. This is where morning prayer becomes revolutionary rather than routine. When you create space, not just to speak to God, but to hear from Him, your entire day shifts from guesswork to guidance, from anxiety to assurance, from reacting to circumstances to responding from divine wisdom. I remember the morning that changed everything for me. I'd been facing a decision that seemed impossible. Every option appeared to have devastating consequences. I had analyzed it from every angle, consulted with trusted advisors, made pro and con lists until my head was spinning, but I was no closer to clarity. That particular morning, instead of presenting God with my analysis and asking Him to bless my preferred option, I did something different. I said, God, I'm completely lost here. I need your perspective. I need to see this situation through your eyes. Help me understand what I can't see. Then I waited, not impatiently checking my watch, but expectantly, like someone waiting for wisdom from the smartest person they'd ever known. And in that silence, something shifted. It wasn't an audible voice or a mystical vision. It was a clarity that seemed to rise from somewhere deeper than my own thoughts. The solution that came to mind wasn't one I had considered. It wasn't on my list of options. But it carried with it a peace that surpassed understanding, a sense of rightness that I knew came from beyond my own limited perspective. When I acted on that guidance, everything unfolded better than I could have hoped. Not only was the immediate problem resolved, but the solution opened doors to opportunities I never would have imagined. That's what happens when divine wisdom intersects with human situations. But this kind of breakthrough doesn't happen by accident. It happens when you create consistent space for God to speak into your life. It happens when morning prayer becomes less about presenting your wish list and more about positioning your heart to receive heaven's perspective on your earthly circumstances. Now let me address something that might be creating resistance in your spirit right now. Maybe you're thinking, this sounds mystical or unrealistic. I need practical solutions to real problems, not spiritual platitudes. Here's what I've discovered after decades of walking with God and helping others establish this practice. There is nothing more practical than prayer. There is no more efficient use of your time than connecting with infinite wisdom before you attempt to navigate finite circumstances. Think about it logically. If you had access to someone who knew the end from the beginning, who could see all the variables you can't see, who had unlimited power to influence your situation, wouldn't consulting with that person be your first priority? That's exactly what morning prayer provides. But it's not just about receiving guidance for major decisions. It's about being equipped with supernatural resources for ordinary challenges. It's about having access to patience when dealing with difficult people, wisdom when navigating complex relationships, peace when facing uncertain outcomes, and strength when your natural resources are depleted. I've watched business leaders make decisions that defied conventional wisdom, but led to unprecedented success because they sought God's guidance first. I've seen parents navigate challenging situations with their children, not through perfect parenting techniques, but through divine insight received in morning prayer. I've witnessed individuals face terminal diagnoses with supernatural peace, couples restore marriages that seemed beyond repair, and people discover their life's purpose in ways that transformed not just their own existence, but the lives of everyone around them. None of these breakthroughs happened because these people were particularly gifted or spiritual. They happened because ordinary people learned to access extraordinary resources through consistent morning connection with God. But let's get specific about what this actually looks like when you implement it in your daily routine, because I don't want to leave you inspired but unprepared. I want to give you a practical framework that you can begin using tomorrow morning. The most effective morning prayer structure I've discovered follows what I call the ACTS model, but with a twist that makes it personally transformative rather than religiously routine. A stands for adoration, but not the formal, distant kind you might imagine. This is about starting your prayer time by simply acknowledging who God is and expressing genuine appreciation for His character. You might say something like, God, you are faithful even when I'm faithless. You are patient even when I'm impatient. You are loving even when I'm unlovable. This isn't about using fancy theological language. It's about recognizing the vast difference between your limitations and His unlimited resources. It's about setting the proper context for everything else you're about to share with Him. C stands for confession, but not the guilt-ridden, self-condemning kind that leaves you feeling worse than when you started. This is about honest acknowledgement of where you've fallen short. Not so you can beat yourself up, but so you can receive the cleansing and freedom that comes from bringing everything into the light. You might confess attitudes that don't reflect God's love, decisions that weren't aligned with His wisdom, or simply the fact that you've been trying to handle life in your own strength instead of relying on His. T stands for thanksgiving, and this is where many people experience their first breakthrough. When you intentionally focus on what's going right in your life, on the blessings you often take for granted, on the ways God has been faithful even in small things, your entire perspective shifts. Gratitude is one of the fastest ways to move from anxiety to peace, from scarcity thinking to abundance thinking, from focusing on what's missing to appreciating what's present. S stands for supplication, which is simply asking for what you need. But here's the key. Ask specifically, ask boldly, and ask with surrender to God's will and timing. Instead of vague prayers like, bless my day, pray specifically, help me handle the difficult conversation with my colleague with grace and wisdom. Give me patience with my children when they're testing boundaries. Show me how to manage my finances in a way that honors you and provides for my family's needs. But here's the twist that makes this framework transformational. After each section, pause and listen. Don't just rush through your list and then jump up to start your day. Create space for God to respond, to impress thoughts on your mind, to bring scripture to your remembrance, to give you insights you wouldn't have had otherwise. This listening component is what transforms prayer from a monologue into a dialogue, from a religious exercise into a living relationship. And here's something beautiful that happens as you develop this practice. You begin to hear God's voice more clearly throughout your day. Those moments of quiet listening in the morning train your spiritual ears to recognize His guidance in the midst of busy schedules and complex circumstances. You'll be in a meeting and suddenly have insight that surpasses your natural understanding. You'll be facing a challenge and remember a scripture that speaks directly to your situation. You'll encounter someone and sense exactly what they need to hear. This isn't coincidence. It's the natural result of maintaining consistent connection with the source of all wisdom. But let me address something that trips up many people who try to establish this practice: They start with unrealistic expectations about immediate, dramatic results. They expect to hear audible voices or receive profound revelations every morning. When that doesn't happen, they conclude that prayer doesn't work or that God isn't interested in communicating with them. Here's the truth about how God usually speaks. His voice is more often a whisper than a shout, more often a gentle impression than a dramatic announcement, more often a gradual knowing than a sudden revelation. Learning to recognize his voice is like developing any other skill. It takes time, practice, and patience. But as you consistently show up, as you create regular space for listening, as you step out in faith on the impressions you receive, your ability to discern his guidance becomes stronger and clearer. Think of it like learning to recognize the voice of someone you love. When you first meet someone, you might not recognize their voice on the phone. But as you spend more time together, as you have more conversations, their voice becomes so familiar that you can identify them immediately, even in a crowded room. The same principle applies to hearing God's voice. The more time you spend in his presence, the more familiar his voice becomes. You begin to recognize his character in the impressions you receive, his love in the guidance he provides, his wisdom in the direction he gives. Now let me share something that will accelerate your growth in this area exponentially. Keep a prayer journal, not because you have to, but because it will revolutionize your understanding of how God works in your life. Write down your prayers, especially your specific requests. Note the impressions you receive during your listening time. Record the scripture verses that come to mind or seem to jump off the page when you're reading. Document the ways you see God working throughout your day. Then, regularly review what you've written. You'll be amazed at how often God answers prayers in ways you didn't expect or notice at the time. You'll see patterns of his faithfulness that encourage your faith. You'll recognize his voice more clearly because you'll have a record of how he's spoken to you before. One woman told me that keeping a prayer journal transformed her relationship with God more than any other spiritual discipline she'd ever practiced. She said, "When I started writing down my prayers and God's responses, I realized he had been speaking to me all along. I just hadn't been paying attention. That's the experience I want for you. Not just the discipline of morning prayer, but the joy of ongoing relationship with a God who loves you more than you can imagine and wants to be involved in every detail of your life. But here's where this gets really exciting. As morning prayer becomes your foundation, as you develop the ability to hear God's voice more clearly, as you experience his faithfulness in small things, you'll find yourself naturally becoming bolder in your prayers and more expectant about his answers. You'll begin to pray not just for your own needs, but for the needs of others. You'll intercede for your family members, your co-workers, your community. You'll ask God to use you as an instrument of his love and grace in the world around you. And something supernatural happens when you begin to pray for others consistently. Your heart expands, your perspective broadens, your problems seem smaller in the context of God's bigger purposes. You begin to see yourself not just as someone who needs help, but as someone through whom God wants to help others. This is where morning prayer evolves from being about personal benefit to becoming about kingdom impact. You realize that God isn't just interested in making your life better. He wants to use your life to make other lives better. When you understand this shift, everything changes. Your job becomes a mission field. Your neighborhood becomes a place of ministry. Your family becomes a laboratory for demonstrating God's love. Your challenges become opportunities to display his power. You stop asking, "What can God do for me?" and start asking, "What does God want to do through me?" You move from being a consumer of God's blessings to being a conduit of his blessings to others. This transformation doesn't happen overnight, but it's the natural progression of anyone who consistently seeks God's face in morning prayer. As you experience his love, you naturally want to share it. As you receive his grace, you can't help but extend it. As you encounter his peace, you become a peacemaker in your sphere of influence. Let me paint a picture of what your life could look like 1 year from now if you commit to this practice starting tomorrow morning. Imagine having such a deep sense of God's presence that external circumstances can't shake your internal peace. Picture yourself responding to difficult people with patience and grace that surprises even you. Envision making decisions, not from fear or pressure, but from a place of confidence that you're aligned with God's purposes. Think about having relationships that are marked by genuine love and forgiveness because you're drawing from an infinite source of both. Consider what it would be like to face each day, not with dread or anxiety, but with anticipation about what God might do through you. Imagine having such clarity about your purpose that every activity either moves you toward that purpose or gets eliminated from your schedule. This isn't fantasy. This is the normal Christian life when it's powered by consistent connection with God through morning prayer. This is what becomes available to anyone who decides that their relationship with their Creator is worth getting up 15 minutes earlier to nurture. But perhaps you're wondering about the obstacles that might prevent you from establishing this practice. Let me address the most common ones, because every barrier has a solution when you understand what you're truly pursuing. The first obstacle is time. I don't have time for morning prayer. But here's the question that will revolutionize your thinking. Do you have time for the stress, confusion, and inefficiency that comes from trying to navigate your day without divine guidance? Do you have time for the mistakes that could be avoided with heavenly wisdom? Do you have time for the anxiety that could be replaced with supernatural peace? Morning prayer doesn't take time from your day. It multiplies the effectiveness of every hour that follows. When you start your day connected to infinite wisdom, you make better decisions that save time. When you begin from a place of peace, you handle challenges more efficiently. When you're aligned with God's purposes, you focus on what truly matters, instead of getting distracted by urgent but unimportant demands. The second obstacle is consistency. I'm not good at maintaining habits. But here's what I've learned about building any life-changing practice. You don't need to be naturally disciplined. You just need to be clear about why it matters and committed to starting small. Begin with 5 minutes. Not because 5 minutes is the goal, but because 5 minutes is sustainable. Success breeds success. When you consistently show up for 5 minutes, you'll naturally want to extend that time. But if you start too ambitiously and fail to maintain it, you'll likely abandon the practice altogether. The third obstacle is doubt. What if this doesn't work for me? What if I don't hear from God? What if nothing changes? These doubts are normal, and they don't disqualify you from experiencing breakthrough. In fact, bringing your doubts to God is one of the most honest things you can do. Start where you are with whatever faith you have, however small it might seem. God honors sincere seeking more than perfect believing. As you consistently show up, as you experience His faithfulness in small ways, your faith will naturally strengthen. The fourth obstacle is perfectionism. I don't know how to pray properly. I don't know what to say. I'm afraid I'll do it wrong. But here's the beautiful truth about God. He's more interested in your heart than your eloquence, more moved by your sincerity than your sophisticated vocabulary. Prayer isn't a performance. It's a conversation with someone who loves you unconditionally. You can't do it wrong when you're being authentic. God delights in the honest prayers of His children, regardless of how polished or theologically correct they might sound. The fifth obstacle is distraction. My mind wanders. I can't focus. I think about everything except God when I try to pray. Welcome to the human experience. Even the most mature believers struggle with distracting thoughts during prayer. The key isn't to eliminate distractions, but to gently redirect your attention when you notice your mind wandering. Think of it like training a puppy. You don't punish the puppy for getting distracted. You patiently redirect its attention back to what you want it to focus on. Every time you notice your mind has wandered and you bring it back to prayer, you're actually strengthening your spiritual focus. It's like doing mental push-ups that build your ability to concentrate on what matters most. Now let me share with you the secret that transforms morning prayer from obligation to anticipation. The secret is remembering that this isn't about earning God's favor or fulfilling a religious requirement. This is about spending time with someone who loves you more than anyone ever has or ever will. When you approach morning prayer as an opportunity to connect with perfect love, everything changes. Instead of feeling pressure to perform, you feel invitation to be real. Instead of wondering if you're doing it right, you simply enjoy being with someone who accepts you exactly as you are. God isn't waiting to critique your prayers or grade your spiritual performance. He's waiting to pour His love into your heart, to speak wisdom into your mind, to fill you with His peace, and to equip you with everything you need for the day ahead. This is the relationship you were created for. This is the connection your soul has been longing for, even if you haven't recognized it. This is the source of meaning, purpose, and fulfillment that no earthly relationship or achievement can provide. Tomorrow morning, when your alarm goes off, you have an opportunity to discover what you've been missing. You have a chance to experience what life looks like when it's lived in partnership with the God who created you, who knows you better than you know yourself, and who has plans for your life that are better than anything you could imagine for yourself. The question isn't whether God wants to meet with you. He's already made that clear through the sacrifice of His Son, through the gift of His Spirit, through the promises in His Word. The question is whether you'll accept His invitation. Will you choose to pray first? Will you discover what happens when you start each day in the presence of the Almighty? Will you experience the transformation that comes from making your relationship with God your highest priority? Your answer to these questions will determine not just how tomorrow goes, but how the rest of your life unfolds. Because when you learn to connect with God first thing in the morning, everything else begins to fall into its proper place. The God of the universe is waiting to meet with you tomorrow morning. He has things to tell you, love to pour into you, peace to give you, wisdom to share with you, and purposes to reveal to you. Don't miss this appointment. Don't let anything else take priority over this connection. Don't settle for a life lived on your own strength when infinite resources are available through prayer. Your transformation begins tomorrow morning. Your breakthrough starts with your next decision. Your new life is waiting on the other side of choosing to pray first. What if I told you that the most successful people in history weren't successful because of their natural talents or their perfect circumstances? What if the secret was something far simpler, yet far more powerful than anything you've been taught about achievement and fulfillment? Let me introduce you to someone who understood this principle better than almost anyone who ever lived. His name was George Washington Carver, and while most people remember him for his scientific discoveries, the real secret to his extraordinary life was hidden in his daily routine. Every morning before dawn, Carver would walk into the woods near his laboratory, not to study plants, but to pray. He called these early morning walks his dates with God. During these times of communion, he would receive insights that led to breakthrough discoveries that revolutionized agriculture and helped feed millions of people. When asked about his secret, Carver would simply say, "I never have to grope for methods. The method is revealed the moment I am inspired to create something new." That inspiration didn't come from textbooks or laboratories. It came from his morning appointments with the Creator of all things. Carver understood something that modern society has forgotten. When you connect with infinite wisdom before you engage with finite problems, solutions appear that would never emerge from human reasoning alone. But here's what's fascinating about Carver's approach and what makes it relevant to your life today. He wasn't praying for scientific breakthroughs or asking God to make him famous. He was simply maintaining relationship. He was starting each day in conversation with his Creator, and the innovations flowed naturally from that connection. This is the pattern you see repeated throughout history. Daniel in ancient Babylon, who influenced empires through the wisdom he received in prayer. Abraham Lincoln, who would often be found on his knees in the White House during the nation's darkest hours. Mother Teresa, who said her greatest successes came not from her own efforts, but from the strength she drew from daily communion with God. What did all these individuals understand that eludes most people today? They knew that prayer wasn't just a religious exercise or a crisis management tool. They recognized it as the most practical thing they could do to ensure their lives counted for something eternal. Now I want you to imagine something for a moment. Picture yourself 6 months from now, having established morning prayer as your unshakable foundation. You wake up not with the familiar knot of anxiety in your stomach, but with genuine excitement about what God might do through you today. Your first thought isn't about your problems, but about your possibilities. Your first emotion isn't stress about what you need to accomplish, but gratitude for the opportunity to partner with the Almighty in whatever He has planned. You move through your morning routine not frantically preparing for battle, but peacefully preparing to receive whatever grace you'll need for the hours ahead. By the time you leave your house, you're not just hoping for a good day. You're confident that regardless of what happens, you'll have the wisdom to navigate it and the strength to overcome it. This isn't a fantasy. This is the reality that becomes available when you understand what I'm about to reveal to you. But first, let me address the elephant in the room that might be creating resistance in your mind right now. Maybe you're thinking, I've tried prayer before and nothing happened. Or perhaps you're wondering, how can sitting still and talking to someone I can't see possibly change my circumstances? These are valid questions, and they deserve honest answers. Here's what most people don't understand about prayer. It's not about changing God's mind about your situation. It's about aligning your heart with His purposes so that His power can flow through your life unobstructed. When you pray, you're not trying to convince God to bless your plans. You're positioning yourself to receive His plans, which are always better than anything you could devise on your own. Think about it this way. If you had a friend who was incredibly wise, amazingly successful, and genuinely cared about your well-being, wouldn't you want to consult with that person before making important decisions? Wouldn't you want their perspective on your challenges and their insight into your opportunities? That's exactly what morning prayer provides, except the friend you're consulting with isn't just wise and successful. He's omniscient and omnipotent. He knows things you don't know, sees things you can't see, and has power to influence things you can't control. But here's where it gets even more amazing. This isn't a distant, impersonal deity who might or might not pay attention to your concerns. This is your Heavenly Father, who knows you by name, who has counted every hair on your head, who collects your tears in a bottle because they matter to Him. When you establish morning prayer as your daily practice, you're not just starting a spiritual discipline, you're accepting an invitation to the most intimate, powerful, transformative relationship available to human beings. You're saying yes to daily encounters with perfect love, infinite wisdom, and unlimited power. Now let me show you how this works in practical terms, because I don't want to leave you inspired but uninformed. The power of morning prayer isn't mystical or mysterious. It's based on principles that are both spiritually sound and psychologically proven. When you start your day in prayer, you're literally rewiring your brain for success. Neuroscience has shown that the first thoughts and activities of your morning create neural pathways that influence your entire day. When those first thoughts are focused on gratitude, worship, and connection with God, you're establishing patterns of peace and positivity that carry through every subsequent hour. But it goes deeper than psychology. When you pray, you're inviting the Holy Spirit to fill your mind with thoughts that aren't naturally occurring to you. You're asking for wisdom that transcends your own understanding. You're requesting strength that goes beyond your natural capacity. This is why people who pray consistently often find themselves saying exactly the right thing at the right moment, even when they didn't plan what to say. It's why they make decisions that seem risky, but turn out to be exactly right. It's why they have peace in situations that would normally create anxiety. They're not operating from their own resources. They're drawing from an unlimited source of wisdom, strength, and guidance that's available to anyone who asks for it. Let me tell you about Jennifer, a single mother who was working 2 jobs just to make ends meet. Every morning was a marathon of getting 3 kids ready for school while trying to prepare herself for a demanding workday. She was exhausted, overwhelmed, and barely keeping her head above water. Then someone challenged her to try praying for just 10 minutes before anyone else in the house woke up. Jennifer's first response was, "I don't have 10 minutes to spare." But her life was so chaotic that she was willing to try anything. What happened next surprised everyone, including Jennifer. Those 10 minutes of prayer didn't just change her morning, they changed her entire approach to life. Instead of starting each day reactive and stressed, she began each day centered and peaceful. Her kids noticed the difference immediately. Mum wasn't yelling as much. She wasn't frantically rushing around. She seemed calmer, more patient, more present. Her co-workers noticed too. Jennifer started handling difficult customers with grace instead of frustration. She began seeing solutions to problems instead of being overwhelmed by them. Within 6 months, Jennifer had been promoted to a management position that paid enough for her to quit her second job. When asked how she had changed so dramatically, Jennifer's answer was simple. "I started each day by connecting with someone who loves me perfectly and has unlimited resources to help me. Everything else flowed from that." That's the power of morning prayer. It doesn't just change your circumstances, though it often does. It changes you, which changes how you respond to your circumstances, which ultimately changes your outcomes. But here's what I love most about Jennifer's story. She didn't become a different person. She became more of who she was created to be. Prayer didn't give her abilities she didn't possess. It unleashed potential that was already inside her. It connected her with the source of all strength, wisdom, and love, which then flowed through her natural personality and gifting. This is what happens when you understand prayer correctly. It's not about becoming super spiritual or religiously impressive. It's about becoming authentically yourself, empowered by divine resources to live the life you were created to live. Now, let me address something that stops many people before they even begin. You might be thinking, "But I don't know how to pray. I wouldn't know what to say. What if I do it wrong?" Here's the beautiful truth about prayer. You can't do it wrong when you're being real. God isn't looking for eloquence or theological sophistication. He's looking for authenticity. He wants to hear from your heart, not from a script. Some of the most powerful prayers in the Bible are incredibly simple. God, be merciful to me, a sinner. Lord, help my unbelief. Jesus, remember me when you come into your kingdom. These weren't elaborate theological dissertations. They were honest cries from human hearts, and God responded to every one of them. Your morning prayers can be just as simple. God, I need you today. Help me love my family well. Give me wisdom for this decision I have to make. Fill me with your peace. Show me what you want me to focus on today. The words matter less than the heart behind them. God hears the intention, the desire, the faith, even when it's mixed with doubt. He responds to sincerity, not sophistication. But let me give you a framework that can help structure your morning prayer time, especially when you're getting started. Think of it as the RISE method, and each letter represents a different aspect of prayer that, when combined, creates a powerful foundation for your day. R stands for relationship. Start by simply acknowledging who God is and who you are in relationship to Him. You might say something like, "God, you are my Father and I am your child. You love me perfectly and I need you today." I stands for invitation. Invite God into your day. Ask Him to be part of every conversation, every decision, every challenge. God, I invite you into this day. Be with me in every moment. Help me see opportunities to love others and serve you. S stands for surrender. This is where you let go of your need to control outcomes and trust God with whatever happens. God, I surrender my plans to your purposes. I trust that your will is better than mine, even when I don't understand it. E stands for expectancy. End your prayer time with anticipation about what God might do. God, I expect to see your goodness today. I'm watching for ways you'll work in and through my life. I'm excited to partner with you in whatever you have planned. This simple framework can guide your morning prayers without making them feel rigid or formulaic. You can spend 2 minutes on each element or 20 minutes. You can pray out loud or in silence. You can kneel, sit, walk, or even lie in bed. The position matters less than the posture of your heart. What matters is that you're creating space for the most important relationship in your life. You're prioritizing connection with your Creator before you engage with His creation. You're ensuring that divine wisdom has the first word in your day instead of human anxiety getting the last word from yesterday. But here's where this practice becomes truly transformational. As you establish this rhythm of morning prayer, you'll begin to notice that your conversations with God don't end when you say Amen. Throughout the day, you'll find yourself naturally turning to Him in quick prayers, brief conversations, moments of gratitude, or requests for guidance. Your entire day becomes infused with divine connection. Your work becomes worship. Your challenges become opportunities to see God's power displayed. Your relationships become expressions of His love flowing through you. This is what the Bible calls praying without ceasing. It's not about being in formal prayer all day long. It's about maintaining an ongoing awareness of God's presence and an ongoing conversation with His heart. When you live this way, life becomes an adventure instead of an endurance test. You wake up each morning wondering what God has in store instead of dreading what problems you'll have to solve. You face uncertainties with curiosity instead of anxiety, because you know that God sees the end from the beginning, and He's committed to working everything together for your good. This is the life that awaits you on the other side of the decision to make morning prayer your non-negotiable foundation. Not a life free from challenges, but a life equipped to face any challenge with supernatural resources. Not an existence where everything goes according to your plans, but a journey where you discover that God's plans are infinitely better than anything you could have imagined. The invitation is before you. The opportunity is available right now. Tomorrow morning you can wake up and continue living the same way you've been living, hoping things will somehow get better on their own. Or you can wake up and discover what happens when you choose to pray first, when you make connecting with God your highest priority, when you start each day as a partnership with the Creator of the universe. The choice is yours. But I can promise you this: if you choose to pray first, if you make morning prayer your daily foundation, if you prioritize relationship with God above everything else that demands your attention, your life will never be the same. And the beautiful thing is, you don't have to wait to see if this works. You can start experiencing the benefits immediately. Tomorrow morning could be the beginning of the most transformative season of your entire life. All it takes is one decision, one commitment, one choice to put God first and see what happens when you do. Are you ready to discover what you've been missing? Are you ready to experience the peace, wisdom, and power that flow from daily connection with your Creator? Are you ready to transform not just your mornings, but your entire existence? The God who created you, who loves you more than you can comprehend, who has plans for your life that exceed your wildest dreams, is waiting to meet with you tomorrow morning. He's been waiting your entire life for this conversation. Don't keep Him waiting any longer. The power of this choice ripples through every aspect of your existence in ways that will astound you. When you commit to seeking God's presence first each morning, you're not just adjusting your schedule. You're repositioning your entire life to receive supernatural breakthrough after breakthrough. Let me share something with you that will revolutionize how you think about this practice. Most people approach morning prayer like they're trying to get something from God. They come with their wish lists, their problems, their requests for divine intervention. But what if I told you that God is actually more eager to give than you are to receive? Scripture tells us that God's thoughts toward you outnumber the grains of sand on every beach. Before you even wake up, He's already thinking about you, planning good things for your day, preparing opportunities for you to experience His love and power. Your morning prayer isn't about convincing God to bless you. It's about positioning yourself to receive the blessings He's already prepared. Think about that for a moment. The God who spoke the universe into existence, who commands the stars and controls the winds, who holds the hearts of kings in His hands, that same God is sitting on the edge of His throne, waiting for you to wake up tomorrow morning so He can pour His love into your heart and His wisdom into your mind. This reality should change everything about how you approach your day. You're not waking up to face uncertainty alone. You're waking up to meet with someone who has already gone before you, who has prepared your path, who knows exactly what you'll need, and has already made provision for it. But here's where most people miss the miracle. They rush through their prayers like they're checking items off a to-do list, never creating space for God to respond. They treat prayer like a monologue, when it's designed to be the most meaningful dialogue of their entire day. The breakthrough happens in the listening. The transformation occurs in the silence. The divine downloads of wisdom, peace, and direction flow when you create space not just to speak to God, but to hear from Him. I want to tell you about Michael, a CEO who was on the verge of losing everything. His company was failing, his marriage was falling apart, and he was battling depression so severe that some mornings he couldn't even get out of bed. Success had always come naturally to him, but suddenly nothing was working. A friend challenged Michael to try something radical. Spend the first hour of every day in prayer and silence, not asking for anything, just being present with God. Michael's first response was, "I don't have an hour to waste when everything is falling apart." But his friend pressed him, "If you're about to lose everything anyway, what do you have to lose by trying?" So Michael started setting his alarm an hour earlier. The first few mornings were excruciating. His mind raced with all the problems he needed to solve. He kept checking his watch, calculating how much work he could be doing instead of sitting in silence. But something began to shift around day 10. Instead of his mind being filled with anxiety about all the things going wrong, he started receiving insights about solutions. Not from his own thinking, but from somewhere deeper, somewhere wiser. By day 20, Michael wasn't just receiving business strategies. He was gaining perspective about his marriage, clarity about his priorities, peace about outcomes he couldn't control. That hour of prayer became the most productive hour of his entire day, even though he wasn't doing anything. Within 6 months, Michael's company not only survived, but thrived with innovations that came directly from insights received during those morning prayer times. His marriage was restored through the patience and wisdom he gained from daily connection with God. His depression lifted as he discovered his identity wasn't tied to his success, but to his relationship with his Creator. When people ask Michael how he turned everything around, he always gives the same answer. "I stopped trying to figure everything out on my own and started each day by connecting with someone who already had all the answers." That's the power of creating space to listen during your morning prayer time. God has solutions to problems you haven't even encountered yet. He has wisdom for decisions you don't even know you'll need to make. He has peace for storms that aren't even on the horizon. But you'll never access these resources if you never create space to receive them. You'll never hear His voice if you never stop talking long enough to listen. Now let me address something that might be creating doubt in your mind. Maybe you're thinking, but how do I know if what I'm hearing is actually from God? What if it's just my own thoughts? What if I'm making this up? These are important questions, and I'm glad you're asking them. The ability to discern God's voice is something that develops over time, but there are clear principles that can help you recognize when He's speaking. First, God's voice never contradicts His character or His written word. If you sense Him leading you to do something that would harm others, violate biblical principles, or compromise your integrity, that's not God's voice. His Spirit will always lead you toward love, truth, righteousness, and peace. Second, God's voice brings clarity, not confusion. When He speaks, there's usually a sense of rightness about it, even if you don't understand all the details. His guidance often comes with supernatural peace, even when the direction seems challenging. Third, God's voice usually calls you to something bigger than your own comfort or convenience. He rarely tells you to take the easy path, but He always provides the strength to take the right path. Fourth, what you sense from God will bear fruit over time. His guidance leads to positive outcomes, even when the journey is difficult. If you consistently act on what you believe is His voice, and it leads to destruction or confusion, you need to examine whether you're truly hearing from Him. The beautiful thing is that God wants you to recognize His voice even more than you want to hear it. He's not playing hide and seek with His guidance. He's not trying to make it difficult for you to know His will. He delights in revealing His heart to His children. But discernment develops through relationship. The more time you spend with God, the more familiar His voice becomes. Just like you can recognize the voice of someone you love in a crowded room, you'll learn to recognize God's voice in the midst of all the other voices competing for your attention. This is why consistency in morning prayer is so crucial. It's not just about the individual prayers you pray. It's about developing an ongoing relationship that transforms how you navigate every moment of your life. Let me paint a picture of what this looks like practically. Imagine you're facing a difficult decision at work. Instead of agonizing over it for hours, you find yourself naturally turning to God in a quick prayer. Father, I need wisdom here. Show me what you would do. Then, throughout the day, you notice things you wouldn't normally notice. A conversation with a colleague sparks an insight. A verse you read months ago suddenly comes to mind with perfect relevance. A sense of peace about one option versus anxiety about another becomes clear. This isn't coincidence. This is the natural result of maintaining consistent connection with the source of all wisdom. When you start each day plugged into divine guidance, that guidance continues flowing throughout your waking hours. Your relationships begin to transform because you're responding to people from a place of love rather than reacting from a place of hurt or frustration. Your work becomes more fulfilling because you see it as an opportunity to serve God by serving others excellently. Your challenges become adventures because you know you're not facing them alone. Even your rest improves because you're not carrying the weight of trying to control outcomes you can't control. You learn to do your part with excellence and then trust God with the results. This is what it means to live in partnership with your Creator. Not a life free from difficulties, but a life equipped with supernatural resources to handle any difficulty. Not an existence where everything goes according to your plans, but a journey where you discover that God's plans are infinitely better than anything you could devise on your own. Now, I want to address something that might be creating resistance in your spirit right now. Maybe you're thinking about all the mornings you've tried to pray and felt nothing. Maybe you've had seasons where God seemed silent, where your prayers felt like they were bouncing off the ceiling. If that's you, I want you to know that spiritual dryness is a normal part of every believer's journey. Even Jesus experienced moments when heaven seemed silent. The Psalms are filled with David's honest expressions of feeling abandoned by God, yet we know David was a man after God's own heart. Here's what I've learned about those dry seasons. They're not evidence that God doesn't love you or that prayer doesn't work. They're opportunities to develop faith that isn't dependent on feelings. They're invitations to seek God for who He is, not just for what He can do for you. Some of the most important growth in my spiritual life has happened during seasons when I couldn't feel God's presence but chose to seek Him anyway. Those times taught me that God's faithfulness isn't dependent on my emotional state. His love for me doesn't fluctuate based on whether I can sense it. When you continue showing up for morning prayer, even when you don't feel like it, especially when you don't feel like it, you're demonstrating the kind of faith that moves God's heart. You're saying, I believe you're here, even when I can't feel you. I trust you, even when I don't understand you. That kind of perseverance doesn't go unnoticed in heaven. God honors faithfulness even more than He honors feelings. And often, the breakthrough comes just when you're tempted to give up. But here's something that will encourage you during those challenging seasons. Even when you can't sense God's presence, He's still working in response to your prayers. Even when you don't hear His voice clearly, He's still guiding your steps. Even when you feel spiritually dry, He's still pouring His love into your heart in ways that go beyond emotional experience. The effects of prayer extend far beyond what you can measure or feel in the moment. When you pray, you're releasing spiritual forces that influence your circumstances in ways you may never fully understand this side of heaven. You're inviting angelic intervention into your situation. You're aligning yourself with God's purposes in ways that create opportunities and open doors you couldn't open on your own. This is why the Bible encourages us to pray without ceasing, not because God needs constant reminders of our needs, but because we need constant connection to His resources. Every prayer matters, even the ones that feel ineffective. Every moment spent seeking God's face is valuable. Even when you walk away feeling like nothing happened, remember, you're not just praying for immediate results. You're building a relationship that will sustain you through every season of life. You're developing spiritual muscles that will serve you in crises you can't even imagine yet. You're creating a foundation of faith that will hold steady when everything else in life feels uncertain. Let me share one more story that illustrates the long-term power of consistent morning prayer. There was a woman named Ruth who started praying every morning for her children when they were young. She prayed for their safety, their character development, their future spouses, their careers, their relationship with God. Years passed. Her children grew up and made decisions that broke her heart. One son struggled with addiction. One daughter walked away from faith entirely. Another son made poor financial choices that led to bankruptcy. For decades, it seemed like her prayers weren't being answered. But Ruth never stopped praying. Every morning, she continued lifting her children to God, even when she couldn't see any evidence that it was making a difference. She prayed through their rebellious teenage years. She prayed through their young adult struggles. She prayed through their failures and disappointments. Then something beautiful began to happen. In his 30s, the son with addiction finally surrendered his life to God and found lasting freedom. The daughter who had rejected faith encountered God in a profound way and became a missionary. The son who had struggled financially discovered a gift for helping others manage their money and built a successful counseling practice. When Ruth was in her 70s, all three of her children were walking with God, serving others, and making positive impacts in their communities. At her birthday celebration, they each shared how they always knew their mother was praying for them, and how that knowledge had been an anchor during their darkest seasons. One son said, "Even when I was running from God, I knew Mum was praying. It gave me hope that maybe God hadn't given up on me." The daughter added, "I used to get angry about Mum's prayers, but deep down I knew they meant she loved me no matter what." The third son concluded, "Those prayers created a safety net under my life that I didn't even realize was there until I needed it most." That's the power of consistent long-term prayer. It creates spiritual momentum that influences situations across decades. It establishes divine protection and guidance that operates even when the people you're praying for aren't cooperating with God's will. Your morning prayers today are setting in motion spiritual forces that will impact not just your immediate circumstances, but your entire future. They're creating a legacy of faith that will influence your children and your children's children. They're building treasures in heaven that will last for eternity. This eternal perspective changes how you approach morning prayer. You're not just seeking help for today's challenges, you're participating in God's grand design for your life and the lives of those you love. You're partnering with Him in purposes that extend far beyond what you can see or understand in the present moment. When you grasp this bigger picture, missing your morning prayer time becomes unthinkable. Not because you're being legalistic or trying to earn God's favor, but because you realize you're being invited into the most significant activity available to human beings: partnership with the Creator of the universe in accomplishing His purposes on earth. Every morning, God is waiting to share His heart with you, to download His wisdom into your mind, to fill you with His strength, to guide you in His paths. He has specific plans for your day that are better than anything you could plan for yourself. He has divine appointments He wants to arrange, opportunities He wants to provide, people He wants to bring across your path. But you'll miss most of these blessings if you start your day disconnected from His heart and His purposes. You'll navigate by human wisdom instead of divine guidance. You'll operate in your own strength instead of His unlimited power. You'll pursue your own agenda instead of His perfect will. The difference between a life lived in partnership with God and a life lived in your own strength is the difference between black and white, between surviving and thriving, between existing and truly living. Tomorrow morning, you have the opportunity to discover which kind of life you want to experience. You can wake up and immediately surrender your attention to your phone, to the news, to your worries, to your endless to-do list. Or you can wake up and give your first and best attention to the one who loves you most and has the power to make every day an adventure. You can start tomorrow reactive and anxious, or proactive and peaceful. You can begin overwhelmed by your circumstances or empowered by supernatural resources. You can face the day wondering if you'll have what it takes, or confident that God will provide everything you need. The choice is entirely yours. But I can promise you this: if you choose to pray first, if you make connecting with God your morning priority, if you start each day anchored in His presence and aligned with His purposes, you'll never look back. The transformation waiting for you is more profound than you can imagine. The peace that will flood your heart, the wisdom that will guide your decisions, the strength that will sustain you through challenges, the joy that will bubble up from deep within your spirit. These aren't religious fantasies. They're the normal Christian life when it's powered by consistent connection with God. Your new life is just one decision away. Your breakthrough begins with your next choice. Your transformation starts tomorrow morning when your alarm goes off and you decide whether to reach for your phone or reach for your Father's heart. God is waiting. He's been waiting your entire life for this conversation. He has so much to tell you, so much love to pour into you, so much guidance to give you, so many blessings to release into your life. Don't keep Him waiting any longer. Don't settle for a life of spiritual poverty when spiritual riches are freely available. Don't try to navigate another day in your own strength when infinite power is offered through prayer. Tomorrow morning could be the beginning of everything you've been searching for, the peace you've been seeking, the purpose you've been longing for, the power you've been needing. It's all available through the simple act of choosing to pray first. Your extraordinary life is waiting on the other side of this decision. What will you choose? The moment you make this commitment, something shifts in the spiritual realm that most people never realize. When you choose to seek God's face before you face your day, you're not just changing your personal routine, you're actually declaring spiritual warfare against every force that would try to derail your divine purpose. Think about this for a moment. The enemy of your soul doesn't care if you pray after you've already filled your mind with anxiety, after you've already reacted to stressful emails, after you've already allowed the world's agenda to set the tone for your day. By then, he's already accomplished his goal of keeping you operating in human strength rather than divine power. But when you pray first, when you prioritize connection with God before anything else gets your attention, you're positioning yourself to receive supernatural downloads of wisdom, peace, and strength that make you absolutely dangerous to the kingdom of darkness. You become someone who operates from heaven's perspective rather than earth's limitations. Let me tell you about a woman named Patricia who discovered this truth in the most unexpected way. She was a high-powered attorney, used to controlling every detail of her professional life. Her mornings were military precise: alarm at 5:30, coffee by 5:35, emails by 5:45, shower by 6 kung, out the door by 6:30. Every minute was accounted for, every second optimized for maximum productivity. Then Patricia went through a devastating divorce that left her emotionally shattered and spiritually bankrupt. For the first time in her adult life, her carefully constructed systems weren't working. She couldn't think her way out of the pain, couldn't organize her way out of the chaos, couldn't control her way out of the crisis. A colleague suggested she try starting her day with prayer instead of emails. Patricia's initial response was, "I don't have time to add anything else to my morning." But when her colleague pressed her, asking what she had to lose, Patricia reluctantly agreed to try it for 1 week. The first morning was awkward. She sat on the edge of her bed, feeling foolish, not knowing what to say, so she just started talking to God like she would talk to a friend she hadn't spoken to in years. She told him about her pain, her confusion, her fear about the future. She asked him to help her through the day ahead. Something unexpected happened during those 15 minutes of honest conversation with God. The knot of anxiety in her stomach began to loosen. The racing thoughts in her mind started to slow. For the first time in months, she felt a sense of peace that had nothing to do with her circumstances. By the end of the week, Patricia couldn't imagine starting her day any other way. Those 15 minutes of morning prayer had become the most valuable part of her entire day. Not because her problems had disappeared, but because she was facing them with resources she didn't know she possessed. Within a month, Patricia noticed that her decision-making had improved dramatically. Instead of reacting emotionally to challenging situations, she found herself responding with wisdom that surprised even her. Her relationships with colleagues became more peaceful. Her interactions with her ex-husband became less combative. Her overall stress levels decreased significantly, even though her workload remained the same. When people asked Patricia what had changed, she would tell them, "I stopped trying to be God and started talking to him instead. I realized I was exhausting myself trying to control things that were never mine to control in the first place." That's the fundamental shift that happens when you establish morning prayer as your foundation. You move from trying to be the source of solutions to connecting with the actual source. You transition from operating in limited human wisdom to accessing unlimited divine understanding. But here's what makes this practice so powerful. It's not just about receiving guidance for major decisions. It's about being equipped with supernatural resources for every ordinary moment of your day. When you start your morning connected to infinite patience, you don't lose your temper as easily when your child spills juice on their school clothes. When you begin from a place of divine peace, you don't get rattled when traffic makes you late for an important meeting. The transformation happens in the small moments as much as the big ones. You find yourself responding to difficult people with grace instead of frustration. You discover solutions to problems that had been puzzling you for weeks. You experience joy in circumstances that would normally drain your energy. This isn't about becoming a different person. It's about becoming the person you were created to be, empowered by divine resources to live up to your full potential. When you're connected to the source of all love, you naturally become more loving. When you're plugged into infinite wisdom, you make better choices. When you're filled with supernatural peace, you create peaceful environments wherever you go. Now, I want to address something that might be creating hesitation in your heart right now. Maybe you're thinking, this sounds wonderful, but I've never been good at maintaining habits. What if I start strong, but then fall back into old patterns? Here's the truth about building any life-changing practice. You don't need to be naturally disciplined to succeed. You just need to understand why it matters and start smaller than you think you should. The goal isn't perfection, it's progress. The objective isn't to impress God with your consistency, His faith. It's to experience fullness, even in your inconsistency. When you miss a morning, don't let guilt keep you from trying again the next day. When you feel like your prayers are distracted or ineffective, remember that God honors your heart's intention more than your eloquent performance. When you go through seasons where prayer feels difficult or dry, trust that God is working, even when you can't sense His presence. The key to success is making the practice sustainable rather than impressive. Start with 5 minutes instead of 50. Begin with simple, honest conversation instead of elaborate spiritual language. Focus on connection rather than perfection. Remember, you're not trying to earn God's love through morning prayer. You already have His complete love and acceptance because of what Jesus accomplished on the cross. You're not trying to manipulate God into blessing your day. He's already eager to pour His goodness into your life because that's who He is. Morning prayer is simply about positioning yourself to receive what He already wants to give you. It's about creating space for divine encounter in a world that's designed to distract you from what matters most. It's about ensuring that the voice of truth gets to speak into your heart before the voices of fear, anxiety, and pressure start shouting. Let me share with you a simple framework that can help structure your morning prayer time without making it feel rigid or formulaic. I call it the Abide method, and each letter represents a different aspect of connecting with God that, when combined, creates a powerful foundation for your day. A stands for acknowledge. Begin by simply recognizing who God is and who you are in relationship to Him. You might say something like, God, you are my heavenly Father, and I am your beloved child. You are all-knowing, all-powerful, and completely good. I need you today. B stands for believe. Affirm your faith in God's character and His promises. Declare truths about His faithfulness, His love, His provision, His protection. I believe you love me unconditionally. I believe you have good plans for my life. I believe you will provide everything I need for today. I stands for invite. Ask God to be part of every aspect of your day. Invite His presence into your conversations, His wisdom into your decisions, His peace into your heart. I invite you into every moment of this day. Be with me in my meetings, my conversations, my challenges, and my celebrations. D stands for depend. Acknowledge your need for God's strength, guidance, and grace. Express your desire to rely on His resources rather than your own limited abilities. I depend on you for wisdom, patience, strength, and love. I cannot live this day well without your help. E stands for expect. End your prayer time with anticipation about what God might do. Look forward to seeing His goodness, experiencing His faithfulness, and participating in His purposes. I expect to see your hand at work today. I'm watching for opportunities to love others and serve you. This framework can guide your prayers without restricting them. You might spend 30 seconds on each element or 10 minutes. You might pray out loud or in silence. You might kneel, sit, walk, or even remain lying in bed. The specific format matters less than the heart posture behind it. What matters is that you're creating sacred space for the most important relationship in your life. You're declaring that before anyone else gets your attention, God gets your heart. You're ensuring that divine wisdom has the first word in your day, instead of human anxiety getting the last word from yesterday. As you establish this rhythm, you'll begin to notice something beautiful happening. Your conversations with God won't be confined to your formal morning prayer time. Throughout the day, you'll find yourself naturally turning to Him in quick prayers, brief moments of gratitude, sudden requests for guidance. Your entire day becomes infused with divine connection. You start seeing God's hand in details you used to overlook. You begin recognizing His voice in unexpected places. You develop an awareness of His presence that carries you through every situation with supernatural peace and confidence. This is what the Bible means when it talks about praying without ceasing. It's not about being in formal prayer every moment. It's about maintaining an ongoing consciousness of God's presence and an ongoing conversation with His heart. When you live this way, ordinary moments become opportunities for extraordinary encounters with God. Your commute becomes a time of worship. Your work becomes an expression of service to Him. Your relationships become channels through which His love flows. Even your challenges transform from obstacles into adventures because you know you're not facing them alone. Every difficulty becomes a chance to see God's power demonstrated. Every uncertainty becomes an opportunity to experience His faithfulness. But perhaps the most beautiful aspect of this transformation is how it affects others around you. When you're filled with God's peace, you become a calming presence in chaotic environments. When you're operating from His wisdom, you offer insights that help solve problems others can't figure out. When you're overflowing with His love, you become a source of encouragement and hope. Your family benefits when you start each day connected to the source of patience and grace instead of beginning stressed and reactive. Your co-workers are blessed when you bring divine wisdom and supernatural peace into challenging situations. Your community is impacted when you operate as a conduit of God's goodness in a world that desperately needs hope. Morning prayer isn't selfish. It's one of the most generous things you can do. When you're filled up, you have something meaningful to pour out. When you're connected to the source of all good things, you become a source of blessing for everyone you encounter. This ripple effect of transformation extends far beyond what you can see or measure. Every morning you spend in prayer, you're not just changing your own day. You're influencing your family's atmosphere, your workplace culture, your community's spiritual climate. You're participating in God's work of bringing heaven's reality into earthly situations. The decision you make tomorrow morning about whether to pray first will impact not just your own experience, but the experience of every person you interact with throughout the day. When you're anchored in God's presence, you carry that presence with you wherever you go. Think about the people in your life who seem to possess an inexplicable peace, an unshakable confidence, a joy that doesn't depend on circumstances. If you look closely, you'll often discover that they understand this secret. They start each day connected to the source of everything they need. They've learned that prayer isn't just a religious obligation or a crisis management tool. They recognize it as the most practical thing they can do to ensure their day goes well, their relationships flourish, and their life counts for something eternal. Tomorrow morning, when your alarm goes off, you'll have a choice to make. You can wake up and immediately surrender your mind to whatever demands your attention the loudest. You can start your day reactive, scattered, and dependent on your own limited resources. Or you can choose to pray first. You can begin your day anchored in divine love, equipped with heavenly wisdom, and empowered by supernatural strength. You can face whatever comes your way from a place of peace, rather than panic, confidence rather than confusion, hope rather than despair. The choice is yours, but the implications extend far beyond what you might imagine. This isn't just about having a better morning. It's about discovering what life looks like when it's lived in partnership with the God who created you, who loves you perfectly, and who has plans for your life that exceed your wildest dreams. Your transformation is just one decision away. Your breakthrough begins with your next choice. Your new life starts tomorrow morning when you decide whether to reach for your phone or reach toward heaven. God is waiting. He's prepared something beautiful for your day, but you'll only experience it if you create space to connect with his heart before you engage with the world's chaos. What will you choose? Will you discover what happens when you pray first? Will you experience the peace that comes from starting each day in God's presence? Your answer will determine not just how tomorrow unfolds, but how the rest of your life is lived. The God of the universe is extending his invitation. Will you accept it? The invitation stands before you right now, in this very moment. But let me tell you something that will shake you to your core about what happens when you finally say yes to this divine appointment. You see, the moment you commit to praying first, you're not just changing your morning routine. You're declaring war on mediocrity and stepping into a dimension of living that most people never even know exists. I want you to understand something profound about the spiritual mechanics of what occurs when you make this choice. Every morning becomes a battleground between two kingdoms. There's the kingdom of this world, which wants to fill your mind with anxiety, distraction, and human limitations. And there's the kingdom of heaven, which wants to download divine wisdom, supernatural peace, and unlimited possibilities into your consciousness. When you choose to pray first, you're essentially choosing which kingdom gets to set the agenda for your next 16 hours. You're deciding whether you'll operate from scarcity or abundance, whether you'll navigate by fear or faith, whether you'll draw from human resources or tap into divine power. Let me paint you a picture of what this looks like in real time. Imagine tomorrow morning, your alarm goes off at exactly the same time it always does. But instead of that familiar surge of dread about everything you need to accomplish, instead of immediately reaching for your phone to see what crisis might be waiting for you, you make a different choice. You swing your feet over the side of the bed, and you say something that changes everything. You whisper into the quiet darkness, "Good morning, Father." Before anyone else gets my attention, before anything else captures my focus, I want to give you my heart. In that moment, something shifts in the atmosphere around your life. It's subtle at first, like the first breath of spring after a long winter, but it's unmistakably real. You've just invited the creator of the universe into your day before the chaos has a chance to invade your peace. What happens next will astound you. As you spend those precious minutes in his presence, as you pour out your heart to the one who loves you more than life itself, you begin to receive something that money cannot buy and human effort cannot produce. You receive divine perspective on everything you're about to face. That difficult conversation you've been dreading suddenly doesn't seem so impossible because you realize you won't be having it alone. That decision that's been keeping you awake at night begins to clarify as divine wisdom illuminates options you hadn't considered. That relationship that's been causing you stress starts to transform as you receive supernatural grace to love and forgive in ways that transcend your natural capacity. But here's where this gets absolutely revolutionary. The changes that occur during those morning moments of prayer don't stay confined to your prayer time. They become the operating system for your entire day. Every conversation you have carries the echo of divine wisdom you received in the morning. Every challenge you face is met with the supernatural strength that was downloaded into your spirit before dawn. Your colleagues start noticing something different about you, though they can't quite put their finger on what it is. You're calmer in crisis situations. You're more patient with difficult people. You have insights that seem to come from somewhere beyond your normal thinking. You carry a peace that makes no sense given your circumstances. Your family experiences a version of you that's more present, more loving, more patient. Not because you're trying harder to be a better person, but because you're connected to the source of everything good. You're not operating from your own limited reserves of kindness and patience. You're drawing from an unlimited supply that gets replenished every morning through prayer. But let me tell you what happens to the people who refuse this invitation. They wake up and immediately surrender their minds to the tyranny of the urgent. They check their phones before they check their hearts. They fill their consciousness with other people's problems before they've connected with the one who has solutions to every problem. They start their day reactive instead of proactive. They face their challenges alone instead of in partnership with omnipotence. They operate from anxiety instead of anchored in peace. They navigate by human wisdom instead of divine guidance. And then they wonder why life feels so hard, why peace seems so elusive, why they feel like they're constantly swimming upstream. Don't let that be your story. Don't settle for a life of spiritual poverty when spiritual riches are freely offered every morning. Don't try to face another day in your own strength when infinite power is available through the simple act of prayer. Here's what I need you to understand about the urgency of this moment. Tomorrow is not guaranteed. This opportunity to transform your life through morning prayer is not promised beyond today. The invitation is extended now, in this moment, and your response will determine the trajectory of everything that follows. Every morning you delay is another morning of operating beneath your potential. Every day you postpone is another day of missing divine appointments, overlooking supernatural opportunities, and living far below the abundant life that God has prepared for you. But when you finally say yes, when you finally make that commitment to seek His face before you face your day, everything begins to change. Not just your circumstances, though they often do improve dramatically. But something even more profound happens. You begin to change from the inside out. The anxiety that used to grip your heart in the morning gives way to anticipation about what God might do through you. The dread you used to feel about challenging days transforms into confidence that you're equipped for whatever comes. The loneliness you used to experience even in crowded rooms dissolves as you realize you're never truly alone. Your entire identity shifts from someone who hopes things will work out to someone who knows they're partnered with the one who makes all things work together for good. You move from being a victim of circumstances to being an overcomer who faces every situation with supernatural resources. This is your moment. This is your invitation. This is your opportunity to discover what you've been missing all these years. The God who spoke the universe into existence, who commands the armies of heaven, who holds the hearts of kings in His hands, is waiting to meet with you tomorrow morning. He's not waiting because He needs something from you. He's waiting because He has so much to give you: wisdom for your decisions, peace for your anxious heart, strength for your weary body, love for your relationships, purpose for your days, hope for your future. All of it is available. All of it is offered freely. All of it becomes yours the moment you choose to pray first. So what will it be? Will you wake up tomorrow and continue the same pattern that's kept you operating below your potential? Or will you finally accept the invitation to live the extraordinary life that's been waiting for you all along? Your answer to that question will echo through eternity. The choice is yours, but the opportunity may not wait forever. The God of the universe is calling your name. He's preparing to pour out His love, wisdom, and power into your life. Tomorrow morning could be the beginning of everything you've been searching for. Will you answer His call? Will you choose to pray first? Will you discover what happens when you start each day in the presence of perfect love? Your transformed life is waiting on the other side of this decision. Beautiful soul, we've journeyed together through the transformative power of morning prayer, and now I want you to understand something profound. Everything we've shared today isn't just information to consider. It's an invitation to revolutionize your existence starting tomorrow morning. You now possess the blueprint for a life lived in divine partnership. You understand that praying first isn't just a spiritual discipline. It's the most practical decision you can make for your peace, your relationships, your purpose, and your joy. You've seen how ordinary people become extraordinary when they tap into supernatural resources through consistent morning connection with their Creator. The stories, the principles, the frameworks we've explored all point to one undeniable truth. When you choose to seek God's face before you face your day, everything changes. Not just your circumstances, but your capacity to handle any circumstance with wisdom, grace, and unshakable confidence. Tomorrow morning, your alarm will sound just like it always has, but you now have the opportunity to respond differently than you ever have before. You can reach for your phone and surrender your mind to the world's chaos. Or you can reach toward heaven and receive divine downloads of peace, wisdom, and strength that will sustain you through every moment that follows. The God who created you is waiting. He has been waiting your entire life for this conversation. He has love to pour into your heart, wisdom to download into your mind, peace to flood your spirit, and purposes to reveal that will make your life count for eternity. Your transformation begins with your next decision. Your breakthrough starts with your next choice. Tomorrow morning could be the beginning of the most extraordinary season of your entire life. The invitation is extended. The opportunity is available. The question isn't whether God wants to meet with you. He's already made that abundantly clear. The question is whether you'll finally accept his invitation. Your extraordinary life is waiting on the other side of choosing to pray first. What will you choose?